Hello and welcome to our first episode in our podcast mini-series called Women in Life Science with Barrington James. So to give you an idea as to the reason behind the podcast and why we're actually doing the podcast and the mini-series, myself and Holly Bird, who is one of our associate directors, were having a conversation about how we can effectively articulate the important messages behind women in business, women in pharma, women in life science, specifically for International Women's Day this year, and for Women's History Month as well. We then led on to the discussion about how it's a much bigger conversation that needs to be happening, and not everyone has these conversations outside of International Women's Day or Women's History Month. Even though it's a good marker to sort of reignite these conversations, we need to be having these conversations throughout the year. So the point of the podcast was to get these conversations going and ensure that we do our part to bring women together, empower women, but also to try and make an impact on women from sort of grads all the way up to people that are more seasoned in their career, and whether that impact is on just one individual woman or on an entire industry, it's something that we want to be a part of. So without further ado, today we'd like to welcome our first guest onto the podcast, Alison Kneen. Alison is an influential figure within market access and within life sciences. She has spearheaded the growth of many well-known consultancies within the industry, and has been an advocate for women within leadership throughout her career. So thank you, Alison, for joining us today. And if you would like to kick us off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your career so far.
Certainly, and thank you for the kind introduction. Well, currently I'm working as the Vice President within Evidera PPD as research science, and thoroughly enjoying it because we have a lot of women within Evidera. So my boss, Monique Martin, is obviously a female, and her boss, is actually a female as well, Margaret Vernon, and then the CEO is female as well.
Fantastic.
So
Okay.
quite unusual. But a little bit about my history. I've seen many changes for women in business over the years. When I first started working, and I worked in the pharmaceutical industry first, that was in the days where women weren't even allowed to wear trousers to work.
Wow, okay.
So it then graduated over the years to you could wear tailored trousers, but you had to cover, with a long jacket, make sure your bottom was covered. So things have really progressed, even on the professional dress code front of things, and all for the better. All for the better. There's lots of other changes that have happened as well for the better with sort of equity legislation, etc. Where previously, if you had actually got married, quite often, depending on what profession you were in, they would ask you to leave because you were seen as not being fully dedicated. And it seems very hard to believe it now, for younger women, because it's such a big change. But I mean, I'm 60 now, so for that to have happened in my working lifetime, it's not that long ago, really.
No, it's really not, and I think it's very easy for us to forget how different things were for such a short period of time ago as well. And there are definitely some big changes that have happened since then. Well, look, on a more positive note, tell me a bit about who it was that inspired you to pursue a career in life sciences.
I think it was actually, there were two individuals, and both in the same company, and they were the ones that they inspired me, and they gave me my big opportunity. And that was a lady called Kim Stratton, who was incredibly dynamic, a very vivacious lady and very driven. And she really took me under her wing. And also at the time, this was within Novartis, and at the time we had a UK CEO, Drummond Paris, who was a highly experienced CEO who had been CEO for about 14 years. And they gave me my opportunity, and they actually sent me to university. So they actually sent me to
Wow,
Cambridge,
okay.
and paid for everything. And then on the back of that, I did an assignment. This is going back quite some time now. Did an assignment on devolution and how it would affect the drug industry. And on the back of that, I had to report back on what I'd submitted to the CEO, and he reorganized the company on the back
Wow,
of
that's
it.
amazing.
So it was very trusting of them, and
Yeah.
also very, very good that they gave me that opportunity, and I'm forever grateful for it.
Okay, that's amazing. And when was this?
Oh, this was way back. This was in 1980, I think 84.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So, throughout your career, you will have spoken to many influential people, right? People that have impacted your career, people that have maybe made an impression on you personally. So, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you have been given?
I think you have your vision of where you want to go and what you want to do, and you hold true to your values. And that's the best thing you can ever do. People are people. And I think we're very fortunate if we're in a position as a female leader to be able to lead others. And that goes for all types of people, all different sexes, genders, different ethnic backgrounds, the whole bit. It's the importance is equity. I think now it's not so much sex. There may be a little bit of unconscious bias going on, but
Yeah.
it's really to treat people as people in the way you would like to be treated yourself. And that's what's really important.
I couldn't agree more. And if you were to speak to a woman who is now where you were at the start of your career, what is one thing that you would say, or one bit of advice that you would give them?
I'd say always be professional. Yeah, always think about the way you're presenting yourself, that you're seen as professional for the role that you're doing, and hold true to what your value system is. And there's usually good guidelines within all of the major companies anyway. There's always, sort of their values, which are really core values that they all hold. And that gives a good basis and a good grounding.
That's great advice, Alison. Thank you very much for sharing. As a woman, when would you say you feel the most empowered in business?
I feel empowered all the time. I actually don't have a problem feeling empowered.
Fantastic.
I've never really had if someone says no, we don't want you to do something, it's usually for a very valid business reason. And that's absolutely fine, because I think in business you've got to realize that it isn't sometimes we take decisions personally when really
Yeah.
they're not personal. It's really a business decision that something happens or whatever. So empowerment for me was never a challenge, but maybe that's due to my personality type. Though I do manage and lead teams of people who would be quite different from myself in personality type. And it's always important to remember how different character types tend to present themselves, the way
Yeah.
they like to be managed, etc., because it takes all sorts of different types of people with different character types and different skill sets to give us the success that we have, whether it be in the pharmaceutical industry or whether it's in consulting. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's very important to understand who you're dealing with and how your message that you're trying to deliver is going to be received at the other end.
Well, if you're feeling empowered all the time, then we're obviously moving in the right direction, which is fantastic, and is such a good example to set for women and for other people in business as well.
And one thing I would say, sorry to chip in,
No, please go ahead.
I was just thinking, the one thing I would say, if as a female you're feeling that, you're not being able, your voice is not being heard, maybe the organization that you're currently working for isn't the right one for you. Because we spend a lot of our time working. It's a very important component in our life. And you've got to be really happy. And that's that happiness of the environment and the people you're working with and the work that you're doing are the bits that all make me feel empowered. Plus, I'm very lucky that I have a lot of women that are all above me, that can help nurture me and coach me as well along my career journey. So I think if you're sitting and you are not happy with the situation, first of all, look at yourself and sit and think, is it me as an individual? Is there something I need to change? Or is it perhaps the organization? And if the organization isn't the right fit, well, my advice is look, because there's lots of others that are.
Okay. That's a really good insight, actually, and obviously a very big part of our job as women is to empower each other, lift each other up, and obviously start with ourselves, as you mentioned. But I mean, it is obviously a great point that it's also about the environment that we're working in. If you're not surrounded by the right people, or the right environment where it doesn't allow you to feel empowered and sort of doesn't allow you to be supported by other people and other women, then maybe it is time to move on to another organisation such as Evidera, which is obviously where you are at the moment, that is sort of supportive of women, empowers women, but is also run by very senior women as well. And Alison, what do you think is the best way that we can support other women in business?
I think it varies. I don't think there's any one set way. I think it's a matter of listening to what their issues are, what are the challenges, and then trying to address those where possible. At different times in your working career as a woman, you will have different issues to deal with, and it's not always the woman that has the challenges. Because traditionally the way things are, it's seen that women look after the children. Yeah, so they bear the children, they look after them, but not always. There are men that are raising young families as well. And then as you get older, towards my age, you end up looking after more elderly parents, etc. And I think it's really listening to when we need to flex a little bit. So for example, within Evidera, we would have a policy where we can flex with time. If people need to pick up children from school, for example, we can work things out, etc. for them, and that's very good. And you've got to have an accommodating workforce like that to meet all needs. And again, we work globally, so we're working in all different time zones and working across many different cultures as well. So it's not always women, but it just varies. But I think having that flexibility and listening to what people want, and if there are challenges, to address them. Don't let them sort of get swept under the carpet. Deal with them at the time.
Yeah, so it does have to start with listening, doesn't it? If an organisation doesn't know what the issues are, how can they work around addressing them? So Alison, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. What you've said has been so valuable and has really helped us to demonstrate how important it is to respect women, empower women, and encourage gender equity as well. Just before we do sign off, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Oh, I think that's it. I think I'm just absolutely delighted and very proud to be a woman and a woman in business for many years, and delighted to see the way things have moved forward for women and are now doing for other groups within the workplace as well.
Look, thank you again, Alison, for being on the first episode of our podcast today. It's been really great to speak with you. And thank you also to everyone listening. Stay tuned for our next episode where we have a Director of Market Access, Policy and Methods from Pfizer coming in. So really excited for you all to hear next week's episode as well. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your post notifications, and all of our socials will be tagged down below.